This video is a collection of 3 bizarre and extremely unlikely stories. Welcome to True Mysteries. In March 2014, 22-year-old Sailor Gillians and her boyfriend, 22-year-old Brendan Vega, were hiking on Lower Cold Spring Trail in Montecito, California, at about 4 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. The 2 inexperienced hikers decided to venture off the designated hiking path. This area is safe and beautiful and hiked by many locals on the paths. However, when venturing off of the paths, the area can be very rugged and quite dangerous, as Sailor and Brendan soon discovered. Sailor and Brendan were still off of the designated path that evening when the sun began to set. They didn't have any lights and were not prepared for night hiking, especially through such rugged terrain. As they attempted to climb down from the mountains, they had only the lights from their cell phones to light their way. Sailor jumped down from a large boulder and didn't see where she was landing and broke her ankle. With a broken ankle, she was unable to continue walking, so Brendan attempted to carry her. He only made it a little ways when he also fell. The fall shattered Brendan's glasses, broke Brendan's elbow, broke Sailor's other ankle, and broke Sailor's wrist. Now, Sailor was in excruciating pain and could not move. Brendan could not see and had a broken arm, but Brendan was the only one that could go for help, so that's what he did. They were not far from civilization, so Sailor would have expected help to arrive fairly soon. It did not. Sailor spent the rest of the night in agonizing pain, screaming for help on the side of the mountain. At the same time that Sailor was on the side of the mountain, a 28-year-old man named Peter Biava was on an airplane traveling from Florida to California. When he landed on Monday morning, he met up with his brother-in-law, Joe Valapiano, and Joe's girlfriend, Nicole Gergen. They decided that morning to go hiking, but not just any hiking, they decided to go bouldering. They also decided to go bouldering on Cold Spring Trail in Santa Barbara. When they arrived and they were hiking up the trail, they decided to leave the trail to go bouldering at exactly the location that Sailor had fallen. But they didn't see her. After the second fall, Sailor had come to rest on the ground in a mud puddle between all of these large boulders. She was also in and out of consciousness and was not aware that the climbers were nearby. The climbers were climbing these boulders, enjoying themselves, while taking pictures with Sailor in the background of the pictures and were completely unaware that she was there. Until Nicole saw something red. She noticed that the red thing was moving. Upon further inspection, she realized that it was Sailor's red hair, and they immediately assisted her and called 911. However, unfortunately, the Santa Barbara Search and Rescue had already been called to the area, because just an hour earlier, and only about 100 yards away, a separate group of hikers had found the body of Brendan. The night before, while trying to go for help without his glasses or a light, and also injured, he had fallen from a 30-foot cliff and died. Sailor was rescued, and after 11 months and 5 surgeries, she fully physically recovered. If Biava had not taken that flight, if they had not decided to go hiking that morning, if they had not decided to go hiking on Lower Cold Spring Trail, if they had not decided to leave the trail at exactly the location that Sailor had fallen, no one would have found Sailor for months. On April 12, 2021, Renee Campion was hiking in Angeles National Forest in Southern California. Campion was a 45-year-old fit man that had been on these trails more times than he could count. On this particular day, Renee was feeling adventurous and decided to take a trail that he had not taken before. He was not particularly worried by this, as he had been in the area many times before and should be able to find his way back. He expected that this hike would last a total of about 2 hours and he would be headed back home. Renee soon lost track of the path that he had been following. He searched for several hours trying to find a path and gain his bearings. He would gain elevation and try to see familiar peaks or trails of any kind, but he found none. He was lost. He had also committed a cardinal sin of hiking in that he not only left without a fully charged phone, he also unknowingly had the location tracking feature turned off. Having only 10% battery power and no signal, He decided to climb to the highest peak he could see and try to get a signal. It worked, but he only had one bar. He texted the words, "SOS, my phone is going to die, I'm lost." He also attached 2 photos showing his surroundings in hopes that this would help search and rescue determine his location. His friend received the text and 1 photo. This was not much to go on, but his friend sent the photo to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, who immediately began searching for the lost hiker. With almost nothing to go on, the Sheriff's Department searched the rest of that day and that night and came up empty. The next day, the Sheriff's Office was worried about the cold and the extremely high winds of the previous night and knew conditions for the hiker were extremely rough. Sergeant John Gilbert of the search and rescue team was extremely concerned for Renee's safety. They released the picture to the public asking if anyone could recognize the area that the picture had been taken. About 60 miles away in Ventura, California, an electrical engineer with a passion for ham radio saw the tweet. He was also a hiker, and one of his favorite pastimes was finding interesting locations on Google Earth. This man's name was Ben Kuo, and he knew that time was of the essence. So he got to work. He began searching near Buckhorn Campground, as this is where Renee's car was found. The first thing he noticed in the picture is that there was plenty of foliage. There are not many green valleys on the north side, so Renee must be on the south side. This immediately, significantly reduced the search area. Before long, Ben had zeroed in on an area that looked similar to the image. He then punched in the date and the time that the photo was taken into Google Earth, and the satellite image was an exact match. Ben sent the coordinates along with a screen capture of the location to the sheriff's office. The search and rescue team jumped in their helicopter and found Renee less than a mile from Ben's coordinates. A complete stranger found a lost hiker using Google Earth and this photograph. On Saturday morning, May 15, 2020, a woman drove her husband and 3 other men to the entrance of a cave in the Loutraki area in Greece. The woman dropped the men off at the entrance to the cave, then drove away and went about her business that day. Later that evening, the woman returned to the cave to pick up her husband and the 3 other men, but no one was there. She waited in her car, occasionally exiting, looking around the area, and yelling out for her husband. She also looked down the entrance of the cave and yelled down the cave, but there was no answer. She eventually broke down and called the authorities at 2 a.m. Sunday morning. The authorities showed up to the cave and located the men at 20 meters into the cave, and they were all deceased. The authorities also discovered a generator and an undetonated homemade explosive device. The Special Disaster Unit was called in, and after 4 hours the men's bodies were removed from the cave and taken to Corinth Hospital, where it was determined that the 4 men had most likely died from asphyxiation. To understand what happened to these 4 men, a very short history of this region is necessary. Back in April 1941, Nazi Germany invaded Greece. Greece had been putting up a strong fight against Italy, and Germany came to Italy's rescue. In June 1941, Greece had fallen and was occupied by the Nazis. However, during this occupation until 1944, the Greek had a fierce resistance. During this occupation, Nazi forces had taken shelter in these caves around Loutraki. Local legend has it that treasures plundered by the Nazis were buried deep inside these caves. These 4 men were using the electricity from the generator to detonate their homemade explosive device to open up the cave and find the long-lost Nazi treasure. When the device didn't explode, they ran the generator too long, filling up their section of the cave with carbon dioxide and dying from asphyxiation.